All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Have all of us here discussing a topic that's very near to and dear to my heart. Especially, we'll talk about this while we're going through. But I just recently have been diagnosed with ADHD and started realizing some of the tendencies that my life has been going through when I wasn't diagnosed. I wasn't sure about all these different things. And so through the last couple months since I've started speaking with my therapist, this idea of ADHD and technology, the connection that these have, became important to me. And so I wanted to make a webinar talking about this subject because it is becoming such a highly diagnosed disease or condition, not disease, condition. And it's about 11% of all children are being diagnosed with that. Just a little fact. And so it is being more and more diagnosed, being way more studied, and it is this interesting, fantastic field that's being opened up that I wanted to share with all of you. So, just a little bit about me. I am a teacher. I have been teaching as a college professor since 2019, so the past 4 years. I'm just about to start my 5th year. And I teach philosophy, I teach logic, I teach religion courses, and I teach all of these different ideas. But a big focus of mine is to help students engage with material, ideas, and such that is usually online, usually have it on their computers, on their phones. And so this idea is always present for me while I am teaching. With that, I also have children, and they're growing. Education is becoming more and more used to being online. I know I have a niece and nephew who are now almost out of high school, and they've had Chromebooks for the past 7 years, where it's been this constant thing. It's becoming even more and more this case. And with that, and with the rise of technology in the schools, with the rise of diagnosis of ADHD, I just felt like this was a very good connection that would be necessary. And the reason is I was an undiagnosed child with ADHD. I look back at my college years, my high school years, and I see the difficulties that I had going through every step of the way, dealing with a condition that I didn't know about. I recently been diagnosed, and I'll talk about my little story in a bit. But with this, I'm trying to share these ideas to maybe help you or anyone else that in your life, one of your students, one of your children, or anything like that, to be able to have the tools and the techniques and strategies to be able to succeed. As a college professor, I've started to realize that education is built for mainly neurotypical people, which isn't a problem in and of itself, if we realize that. If we realize that the strategies we have been given aren't meant for everyone. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about a lot today. And so, as I said, it is so much more common in the classroom. Not only are students reading on their phones, reading on computers instead of textbooks, they're doing most of their homework, they're doing their writing, they're doing their communication with professors, they're doing math, they're doing all of these different things. Some of my students say they don't have any paper in any of their classes. They never have to turn in a paper assignment. They never have to write down anything on paper. All their notes are on their phone. All their notes are on their laptop. And it is becoming so much more common. One of my students brings a fanny pack to class, and he has everything he needs for all 5 of his classes. And it's mind-blowing because it's totally different than my college experience, where I had all of these huge textbooks in my bag and feeling the scoliosis. And alongside that, as I said before, ADHD is becoming diagnosed more and more. When I was talking to my therapist about this, why we don't talk about ADD as much, through research, through studies, therapists and psychologists and this field started this looking into the fact that ADD and ADHD are very, very similar. They're just different parts of the same condition, just different flavors, as my therapist would call it. And so, because we are understanding this condition more and more, we're able to be diagnosed more and more often. With that diagnosis, then we can understand why we have struggled in certain ways, why we have struggled in regulation of emotions or regulation of time, why it's so hard for us with directions, or any of these other symptoms that we may or may not have. The stereotypical bouncing around, inattentive child isn't every flavor of ADHD. Also, with digital responsibility, one of the things that brought up to my attention was the more I worked with students, so along with teaching philosophy at the university, I also go and give trainings and teachings to students of elementary to high school levels. I started seeing that the more and more we were teaching them to be better digital citizens, we were having to teach them not just but how to use technology, be able to be successful, not be as distracted. And so, just to give a little background, I'm very sorry that this went wonky. A little bit background on my ADHD journey. In high school, the reason why I was never even thought of being diagnosed is I did very well academically. I was a straight A student except for my English classes. I was top 10 of my graduating class. And I did struggle emotionally due to undiagnosed depression. I've worked with that with my therapist a lot. But one of the things that happened when I was in high school, the reason why I did so poorly in English classes, is I had all of these ideas stuck in my brain and it was so difficult to get them out. And one of the symptoms of ADHD is the inability to straighten your ideas or thoughts out unless you either speak them or put them on paper. Being able to recognize and see them helps align the ideas. And in a high school classroom, a lot of the papers that I was writing were like timed papers. You get rid of gets ready for those standardized tests. Be able to write an essay super quickly at a certain amount of time. And I couldn't do that in the allotted time. I couldn't speak to my neighbor about my ideas. And so it always came out wonky. Next step of my ADHD journey is I went to college for the first year and I dropped out after the first year. I struggled with certain classes. I had difficulty working through things that were easy for me before and then were difficult now. One of the big things that I have started realizing is I've heard so many other people who have ADHD being talked about as either gifted or not living up to their potential. And one of the reasons is because with those of us with ADHD, when we find something that interests us, we are able to go into what is called a hyperfocus. And we delve in super deep into this topic where if we're interested in it, we'll do great. But in college, there's not always that motivation to dig deep into something just with how it's built. I had difficulty managing the new environment. Again, with that undiagnosed depression, it was very hard to get out of the room sometimes. And it was a real big struggle when I first went. After 7 years of doing some work, doing some other things in my life, I finally went back to college. I was able to, I was married at the time, and me and my partner were able to work through, and we didn't know it because both of us had ADHD and we've both been diagnosed with it now, that we were compensating for the ways that our brain didn't normally work And some of those techniques we naturally did together, and I'm going to share some of those with you today. To just let you know how I was diagnosed, I was diagnosed about 6 months ago by my therapist. And the reason I started talking to my therapist about this was I started seeing videos and from influencers and on social media talking about their experiences with ADHD, and me going, wait, it's not normal. Not everyone does that. Wait, everyone doesn't have a like mind map in their brain where they have everything mapped out perfectly, where they've been, and everything else just is blurry. Um, wait, and just over and over, all of these coincidences where I would share it with some of my friends, and they're like, "Yeah, this does not relate to me at all. I've never felt this." And it was just more and more like, what if I talked to my therapist, and when we went over the questions, like there's a questionnaire, and we were able to talk and discuss um, all of the different symptoms that someone with ADHD, inattentive, hypoactive subset, all of the symptoms, I was either, oh yeah, totally, that's me, or no, because. And my therapist was able to let me know it's because I was able to find compensating techniques to make up for those symptoms. And yeah, I was 10 for 10. But with that, it's been great because I started realizing the compensation techniques were strategies that I've been using to help me through these struggles. And so, before we do the tech talk, I want to talk a little bit about how difficult ADHD can be for students. Those with ADHD struggle in general. One of the main points that was shared to me by a therapist who focuses on teens with ADHD, he said that because the classroom has been designed for students who are quiet, who are attentive, who are able to pay attention, who don't get distracted, those with ADHD are usually seen as someone who is a worse student, or they're not living up to their potential, right? And so with that, most children need about 10 positive comments for every one negative comment. Well, in a couple of the research studies that have been done where they've been like monitoring students with ADHD, they've noticed that a lot of ADHD students receive about 17 negative comments for every one positive about their behavior. Which, if we need 10 to 1 good to bad, 1 to 17 good to bad is a huge difference, right? And so there is that struggle, there's that shame. One of the major problems with ADHD is we have been finding, the research has been finding that there is a high rate of those with ADHD having comorbidities, conditions that run right alongside. And I have one of those. I have depression. And I've been dealing with it. My therapist, and ADHD and depression work together. Some of the research suggests that the reason for this is because of shame. This idea that I am not good enough, that I am not living up to what I should, that I see others doing things successfully and I'm not able to do it. Seeing how, oh, well, look how great they're doing it, and keeping up with the Joneses, but at an extreme level. Because not just money, but like in every aspect. Oh, this person's able to control their emotions better. This person is able to pay attention. This person's able to complete a task. This person is able to work a job that is normal, 9 to 5, and doesn't have difficulty in that job. Genetics comorbidity is anxiety. A very high rate of people with ADHD have anxiety. That fear. Am I not good enough? So instead of being shamed that they're not good enough, it's that fear that I'm not good enough, which drives this panic, this need to be better, to make sure that you are never making the mistake of not being good enough. Another comorbidity that's very high is OCD, where you are trying to control all of the conditions. You are trying to control all of the situation so it is easier for you to deal with these hard parts of ADHD. The ADHD brain, as it says here, tries to compensate, tries to reach this level of what everyone else does. And some researchers think that this is why these comorbidities develop. This is why anxiety, OCD, and depression with it. I have the depression in my family, and my wife has anxiety and OCD. And our therapist had talked to us about how it does seem to be a way that our brain has compensated or has tried to handle these difficult tasks, these difficult situations that we're in. So another problem with ADHD is that a lot of the productivity advice that we're given in schools, in work, on TV, in books, self-help books, all of these different things, they're not geared for ADHD wired brains. When these people write these books or give this advice, they're like, this is what worked for me. This is a universal answer. So everyone can benefit from this. And that's not the case. It just doesn't work that way. Everybody's brain is different. People are on the autism spectrum, people are on the ADHD spectrum, people have depression or anxiety or all these other conditions that make it to where our brains just work differently. So we need different advice. So on that note, I want to make sure that for the rest of this this seminar that I'm going to be giving, I am not giving you this is what will work. I'm trying to give you more tools to try out with either yourself or your students in your life, with your children or whoever you are in contact with the most, to help you help them succeed. As an example, we have a strategy with my oldest that works with her to regulate her emotions. And that strategy does not work for my second. Does not react well to it. It melts him down. He needs a very more hands-on approach. He needs a lot more touch, while my oldest needs space. So I'm not telling you this is an answer for every single one. I'm trying to give you as many tools as possible to be able to help in the future, if that makes sense. And some of the productivity advice that I've seen other people talk about these are the three main ones for me that I have found that have been most ineffective in my life and the most harmful. The first one is the 2-minute rule. This is one that I've had given to me for almost my entire life, where if you are doing a task, what you're supposed to do is if something comes up to your mind, a small, simple task like, oh, I'm going to take this and put it away. I'm going to take this thing and put it where it belongs, and then come back and do my task. Gets it done. You don't forget about it. You don't let it just run off. And it sounds great, except for this issue that those with ADHD often have something called time blindness. It is hard for us to gauge time. It is hard for those with ADHD to gauge how long a task will take. Maybe it'll take 2 minutes. Maybe it'll take a lot longer. We can be very optimistic with the time. I could totally do this 10-page paper in an hour. That's not how it works. And so it's hard to gauge that time, hard to gauge what's happening. Other problem is transition time. You don't know how long it's going to be from starting a task, moving to that task, and then moving. And one of the biggest issues with this 2-minute rule is it's so easy to lose momentum on a task. So as I found with myself with ADHD, the best way for me to succeed on whatever I'm doing is momentum. If the momentum gets messed with, if I lose that momentum, if I get distracted, I lose it. It's so much harder, so much more difficult to pick myself back up and do what I need to do. And the 2-minute rule can throw a giant wrench into it. If you have to transition, if it takes longer than you thought, if while you're walking there, you see another task that takes 2 minutes and you start that one, then you see another task that starts 2 minutes and you do that one. And sometimes that can work. doesn't always work, and it can really mess up the momentum of a task that's already being done. The other one is eat that frog. This is one that I struggled with for so long, and I still do actually, is in the morning, I have this idea is I'm going to do the most difficult or dreaded task that I have for the rest of the day. To do it, I have to call this person and get the bill paid. I have to research this thing and make sure that I call and do this one problem. I'm going to do it right thing in the morning. It's going to be super difficult, and I'm going to amp myself up, and then I might not do it. And the issue that comes with this is sometimes our energy isn't morning. I am not a morning person. I take a half hour to wake up, so I purposely wake myself up well before my children do. Well, because if not, I'd be completely useless in the morning with my children, because it takes me so long to wake up. And so for me, doing the smaller tasks in the morning is actually easier, because I don't have as much energy to be able to do them. And my high energy, my performance time is in the evenings. I'm able to do so much more work during that time. I'm able to do my emails and calls and the dreaded grading of papers. Doing in the morning makes it more difficult, but doing it at night helps me because that's when I have the peak energy. Task avoidance as well. If it's dreaded, you might avoid that task over and over and over again, which just backs up everything else. And creates a huge backlog that makes that avoidance lead to an overwhelm, right? And that's hard on all of us. And then the last one, the last issue with the eat the frog technique is oftentimes those with ADHD need a build-up time to do bigger tasks. They need that build-up of momentum. They can't just start doing something instantly. They need the buildup of energy and momentum so doing a little task building up to do the big dreaded task will make it easier. The last one is the pickle jar. This is the concept is easy. You think of a jar, a pickle jar, and then you think of all your tasks as pickles, or rocks, or pebbles, or whatever you want to consider it as. And so what you do is you take the really big, important, most important concepts and you put them in and you organize them. And then you fill up the extra time with smaller tasks until these super simple 1-minute tasks you fill in with the liquid, right? And it's a great idea. The problem with this is it has that mentality that every day is only worth anything if you fill up every single second with something productive. And that's not healthy either. There are times where you need downtime. There are times where you need to be able to have a break. And that guilt and that shame doesn't help. The fear and worry that, oh no, I'm going to miss this big thing, isn't going to help. Finding times to do that, yes. But the filling in all the gaps to make sure that you don't lose any time doesn't really measure success well, because doing more doesn't mean you're successful. And so on top of all these difficulties, the problem that a lot of our students have is screens just are distractible. Our brains want to go to the shiny, fancy thing. A lot of the ideas are that once you touch a screen, it reacts instantly. Once you look at it, something, it's just, I'm interacting with the world. I'm focusing on the world. I'm making the world change with me, right? Adding that on just makes it difficult. So some techniques, sorry that got cut off. Again, sometimes this formatting just doesn't work as I wanted it to. So some tips that'll help with technology as well as other parts of life. To give a couple of techniques that have helped me. You can take them, you can put them to your back pocket and pull them out when you need them with your students or yourself. The first one that helps me so much is making the right environment. In my workspace, I have my pad of paper, I have my computer, I have a book, that I am reading at the time. I have my water, I have a light snack, and I have a light. These are the things that I have to have, and my seat. But another thing that I have to do is I have to make sure that I'm sitting there not when I'm dead, not when I have no energy, or I'm going to just waste more energy and not have it during my peak time. So finding the optimal time for the students, it depends. Like maybe it's right when they get home from school. Maybe it's they get home to compress by coloring, watching TV, by doing something else, eating, and then they work. Or maybe it's after dinner, after they've engaged with the rest of the family, they can do homework. Finding that optimal time is what works best. The next part of the environment is something called body doubling. It's something that my wife and I did, my partner and I did, without even thinking about it. It's this idea where if you sit next to someone while you're working, it is more likely that you're able to hold yourself accountable and not be distracted. Like, oh, right, I'm not supposed to be distracted. I'm supposed to be doing this, right? I'm going to be doing this. Body doubling is a great technique that I absolutely love. And so one of the things you can do is if you're a student and working, sit down with them. Do your emails. Do a puzzle. Read a book. Read the news. Take that time to be the time that you're doing the work like them, which ties in with that last one, global rules for the entire family. So if everyone's sitting at the table doing it at this time, then that's how it is. And if maybe if your different students have different optimal times or optimal spaces, but it's still making that rule, or like when we're sitting and doing this, this is when we do it. And making the rule so no one feels left out. And the other two that are great is having some type of music or white noise. This is hard in my family because my wife cannot have any noise happening while she's working, while I need to have some slight music in the background. And so there's always that balance that we need to do to make sure that we can both make our brains focus. And then the last one is the only screen that's there, even if it's your phone, even if your phone's off, if the screen is up, it is so much harder to focus. So turning it upside down even, or putting it in a different room, will help with that focus, help with that executive function, because you can't check your phone if it's not there, right? And if it's face up, it's more likely that you'll look at it and see if anyone's notified you. The next technique is called the Pomodoro technique. Again, sorry about this. What you do is you use something called the Pomodoro technique. I want to show you a modified version. This modified version, the regular one you can look up, and if it works for you, it's fine. There's two versions where you start at 40 minutes, go to 30, then 20, then 10 of work with 10-minute breaks in between. But as I said, build-up needs to happen sometimes, and so 40 minutes is a long time to start off with. The reverse Pomodoro technique is another one where you start with 10, 10-minute break, 20 work, 10-minute break, 30 work, 10-minute break, 40 work, and then you take a 15-minute break, relax, do something completely different, then come back and start doing the cycle all over again. The modified version that I like, especially for getting the ball rolling, is way shorter, just to get the ball rolling and get that momentum going. I use this technique. I even used this technique when I made this slideshow and when I wrote the blog for this seminar. I used it over and over again. You set up a timer and you do 10 minutes of work, and then you take a 3-minute break, and make sure that you keep the break to be low stimulation. No phone, no computer, something where you are able to be away from the computer and decompress your brain. I usually do something simple like empty the dishwasher, or take a quick walk, or do something that gets my body moving so I can get back to those 10 minutes. And what you do is you repeat that cycle 3 times. After you've worked for 3 times, you take a longer 15-minute break. You repeat it again. May seem like you're wasting a lot of time, but I promise that it'll be more productive. It will be better. Quick aside, this reminds me of how there have been so many corporations and companies that have found if they give their workers more time off, they're more productive. Like one of my favorite stories is this paddleboard company back in 2018. They decided to give all of their workers half days, but pay them the full wage, full salary, because during the summer they wanted their workers to use the paddle boards that they were making and selling and engineering, and all of these different things. Like, how are you going to be saying to someone how great it is if you never have time to use it? So over the summer, this company decided to give them more time off. And then they realized over the summer that their workers were actually more productive. They were doing better. They were making more sales in 20 hours a week than the 40. Because, come on, how many times are you at work and you're actually working? Sometimes, yes, but then we lead to burnout. But like a lot of times, like how much of those 8 hours is actually focused 100% on the task? There's going to be a lot that's not. There's going to be a lot that is distracted and focused on other things. And so these 3 minutes over and over again actually help alleviate the need to waste 4 hours on TikTok, 4 hours on the news. It alleviates that need because you're not getting burnt out. And so another one is called the brain dump. This helps me out a lot with when I'm feeling overwhelmed. What you do is instead of doing a to-do list like, oh, I'm going to make a box and say these are the tasks, you do a brain dump. Not just the important tasks, not just the big stuff. You put down everything and you have to write it down, computer or paper. I do it on computer. My sister, who has ADHD, does it on paper because she needs the paper. I do it on the computer. With that, what you do is you write down everything, big and small. Sounds like a to-do list, right? But the writing it out helps get it out of the brain and helps release that overwhelming feeling. The last thing to do, though, that makes it slightly different is you categorize them. You list them based off of priority. You know, picking up your kid from school is a very high priority because they got to get home versus finishing that really good book you're reading. Yeah, it's a great book and you definitely want to finish it, but it's not as high priority. However, you can rank the book higher on amount of fun or other such things. You categorize them by priority, date, the amount of fun you would have doing this task. All of these techniques help you see where you need to put your effort in. Do you really have to put in the effort to make this huge, big, expansive thing for your kid? If they're never going to use it, maybe not. Maybe it's not that high of a priority. You can put that on a back burner for a little bit and do something else. And so with that, those are the techniques that help in all ways of life, not just with technology. But they do help with technology too, I promise. It helps you focus, helps you understand that you are doing something and that you aren't being this failure or this. You are living up to your potential. You're not having to live up like the Joneses. So some of the technology ways to do it is one of the ways that has helped me. It's dubbed monk mode. What you're basically doing is you're making it impossible to access either websites or apps, phone or computer during certain times. This makes it your smartphone a dumb phone for periods, so you can't access these things that are fun. You can't access these things. The one I use is called freedom.to. You can make all of these different lists. You can make all of these different categories and different times and schedule them to where, okay, this is the time that I'm going to be sitting down in that environment. I cannot access whatever social media I want to access. I can't access Etsy. I can't access Amazon. I can't access whatever place I shop, right? Afterwards, I can. When I'm no longer working, I can. But during the time, I can't. Stay Focus is very similar. I've never used it, so I can't attest to how well it is, but I have been told that it works. And Rescue Time does something interesting that is different. You have it running in the background to where it times you and shows you where your time is being used. Not only are you like on your phone and computer, you're able to see where you are going. What are you wasting time on? When are you wasting your time on it? When are you more likely to be wasting 10 hours doing something? And it helps you see, as like with ADHD, if you name it, you can tame it, right? It's a fun little thing to say. So if you know where you're using the time and you're being distracted, then you can block those things for certain time periods and do them at other times where it's less problematic, less distracting. Another thing that my partner uses, she loves this, and I know that other people in my life do, is called Forest. It's an app. You can see it right here, forestmt.seertech.com. How it works, or you can find it on your whatever mobile device you have. You download the app and you choose a plant to grow. You set goals. You don't touch your phone during those goals. And the longer you go not touching your phone, not unlocking, not picking it up, the more your plant grows. And the reason this really helps ADHD brains is that gamification. It's that desire, that motivation to do something, not because it's fun, or not because you enjoy the task itself, but because you really want to beat the number. You really want to see if you can beat the high score of how many things you can do within, how many math problems you can solve within 10 minutes. This helps you, like, how long can I go without touching my phone? And it gives that motivation. The next one is their app is called Off Time. This legitimately blocks your phone, where you turn it off. And for computer, you unplug for a certain amount of time, and it stops notifications coming to your phone. You don't get them. You don't do that. And it also locks everything. So it's unplugging it without having to turn your phone off and on. It's making it to where you have it separated. It keeps track like everything else. And you can see the timer, how long you were like, I don't want to be doing this time period. Next, adding extra steps. So let's say your student or you have a really fun game on their phone. That game in a folder, within a folder, within a folder. Take it off the home screen. Have it to be where it's difficult to get to. The more steps we add, the longer we give our brain to realize, okay, yes, part of my brain really wants to get distracted because what's going on is really hard. We're able to take a step back and like, wait, yeah, it's really hard, but I want to get this other task done. And you're able to walk back and do the thing you're supposed to do. If you are going online a lot, like on Facebook or Instagram, maybe delete the app and sign out on Chrome. And then every time you want to go on Facebook or Instagram or Reddit or whatever social media you have to go onto Chrome or Safari and log in, adding extra steps. Those extra steps help it to where you don't do it as often because you're like, okay, I really don't want to do this right now. I'm just wanting to be distracted. And it helps your brain catch up with your other part of your brain, right? Other things you can do is put the phone in another part of the room, so you have to stand up and go to the phone. No one wants to do that. And it adds those extra steps where you question and you think, do I really want to do this? Anyway, that is all that I have. I just want to remind you that these techniques and these abilities that we've talked about, these strategies, they're not just for people with ADHD. They can help a lot of people, but at the same time, if they don't help you, find what works best for you to help you succeed, because your brain works differently than mine and you have a different flavor of a brain. Your ADHD spectrum or your autism spectrum or any other idea is just a different flavor. You have these brains that work in certain ways. It works great. Just find out how to work with it instead of against it. Because that's the biggest thing I like about these strategies. Working with them, not against them. With that being said, thank you again for watching this. I appreciate you and your time. I know that this is something that's important to me. You can always email us, either contact@respons-ability.net or respons-ability.net, digitalparenting.com. You can go there and look at our websites. We'll always have that. As always, we have our webinar every second Tuesday of the month. Yes, this is the first Tuesday. It's December. We want to give some time for those with kids in school still, before like the last week of school where everything is hectic and crazy. And then you can always just scan right here a reminder for all of the seminars that come up. We do it every month. Next month, we actually have one about making digital citizenship inclusive. So not just dealing with, oh, well, why is it that certain groups have stay-at-home parents? They can monitor, they can handle these problems, right? They can do these things. So it's a really great as a webinar that I'm really excited for with our CEO, Carrie Rogers-Whitehead. She really knows her stuff. So if you're interested in this topic, go ahead and join us on January 9th, 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and we will hear from you then. And please come and watch, and we'll hopefully be able to help you along your way, finding even more strategies to deal with this digital world that we're living in more and more. Anyway, thank you so much, and have a great day.